what's happening on the streets here in Orange County and to take action that's adequate and appropriate. My loving father, Paul Frank Brazer, was one of the people we lost in Orange County this year to homelessness and the lack of appropriate services. After over a year, really years, of navigating and seeking help from so many agencies here in OC, my dad passed alone around 4 a.m. on April 10th, 2019. He was only 55 years old. He passed away a few streetlights from where we had lived for so many years in Fountain Valley. 2 weeks before that night, we went to dinner and I told him I believed in him and that I had hoped that things could still turn around. He said he believed it too, and I knew it was important to say out loud because the things we had experienced navigating programs and systems here in Orange County had been very disheartening and cruel. And I knew I really wanted to share with him from my heart, that I really had that faith, because I knew that he needed that encouragement, and I hoped that the power of our faith would help. I miss and grieve him all the time. My gratitude for all that we were able to experience together is the only thing that gives me comfort. I often say that my dad, I really feel our time was cut short, but he lived so intensely and we did so much that I feel I see people that have their parents for a longer amount of time but may never get that kind of bond. So that's the only thing that gives me comfort. He was so much of who I am and gave us everything he could since before I was born, and loved me and the three of us with all of his heart, and us him. I wish we had more time together in this lifetime, and I know we will always be connected. My dad deserves so much more, and we fought so hard, but the systems were against us every step of the way and allowed this to happen. And I know we are not the only ones. And I think for so long we didn't share because we were struggling to just navigate and survive. And also, now I hope that folks that are also going through that, the same systems, are able to get the help they need and to share their story earlier. I'm still finding it hard to accept that he is not here and our time together was cut very short. There are no words that could do him justice, but I wish they could bring him back. If anything, I hope to share what a wonderful person my dad was, and how much I love him, and how much we still needed him here with us. My dad was so happy to be a father of 3 girls. Everyone commented on how much my dad loved us. He knew my mom was pregnant right away and told her I would be a girl and guessed my exact weight and length. For some time he cared for me as a single dad and was so joyful and energetic about it. My grandma said I should have been named Paula, after Paul, since we were so close. He helped me build all of my science projects, art projects, and homecoming floats for not only my class, but my classmates as well. He taught all of us to swim, including any friend that visited and didn't know how. And in fact, one of those friends recently reached out in a private Facebook message and shared that memory. He enjoyed cooking for us and seeing if we would enjoy the dish. And my sister Sarah, do you want to share anything about that?
So, I ended up studying culinary arts, and after thinking about it later, I genuinely feel that not only my love of putting food together and composing dishes, but also serving other people came from him.
He loved taking vacations at Laughlin and Big Bear. He took us to the fair religiously, and would always win us those big stuffed animals. To watch car races. He loved car races, any kind of car races, and he loved to go to church. He enjoyed music, played the guitar, and took me to my first concert, Tom Petty. Our family enjoyed singing the songs that he loved. They brought us all together, and Sarah used to sing Tom Petty when she was like 3 years old, and people thought it was the strangest thing, but it was awesome. He grew up on a motorcycle. My dad was very, very cool, and he had the scars to prove it. At 16, he learned to become a skilled electrician from his oldest brother, George, and after he passed, his biggest client and dear friend, Dan, said of him that he was the most talented and honest man he had ever met, and that us girls were the shining star of his life. My mom, Kathy, said of my dad, Paul, "When you're with Paul, you know you are safe and cared for." My dad was a very strong man. He enjoyed working out. When he was his healthiest, he would get up at 3 or 4 a.m. and go to the gym before work every day, and go to Jamba Juice after for a smoothie. Razzmatazz. But he also was strong emotionally, because despite all the trauma he experienced, he lost his dad at an early age as well. And the lack of care he received, it wasn't until he was 54 that he was asked if he thought he could use therapy to unpack some of that trauma. He was so loving toward all those in his circle, and there was nothing he wouldn't do for us. He was also very kind-hearted and enjoyed helping strangers. And sometimes towards the end, I would ask him to focus on his situation, and we didn't have time to help everyone along the way, but he insisted. My dad wanted to live maybe more than a lot of people. I think that's something that hurts a lot. I knew that he wanted to keep living, and he was afraid of what was happening. He was survived by his mother, Mary, and today is actually her birthday. She texted me, and we talked yesterday, and she said that she is feeling really down because she just feels that he passed too young, and she's in her 80s, and she shouldn't have to be feeling that kind of depression. She's supposed to be retired and enjoying her life. But she said today that she's feeling a little bit better and has been sharing more about it, and that's helping. His brother John, his 3 daughters, myself, my sister Sarah, and our youngest sister Mary, who can't be here today. She's in Santa Cruz at school. His stepdaughters and grandchildren, he helped raise those grandchildren through his stepdaughters, who he loved very, very much. His ex-wives and partners who miss him as we do. His best friends who've reached out, and all those who knew and loved him. We will all miss him, and I pray that his energy and the joy he brought to all of our lives will carry on in us. Enough is enough. We want affordable housing and services that meet people where they are, provided by people who understand the complex needs of our loved ones facing homelessness. I love you, Dad. Thank you for everything. So that was the statement I had prepared to read at the meeting on Tuesday. So it was difficult to read because I prepared for 3 minutes, we had 2 minutes, and then we were still cut off. But I'm not new at this, and I knew I was going to finish the statement I prepared for my dad, because I knew that I'd been cut off at those meetings before, and this was different. This was to honor his life and those of the over 200 people who had passed. So I did skip the part that talked about who he was, and I let them know that, but I did try to finish the closing statement at least. And I continued to speak, but eventually they turned the mic off. But I was really thankful to folks who supported and held the space despite the Board of Supervisors not doing that. And then I wrote something for today, if I can share with you all, to kind of share about what happened, but really to share a little bit about our story navigating these agencies, because I think it's easy to overlook and forget when someone's gone. But now that I have the time to come and share, I think it's important to really highlight, and this is just a brief overview, but there's a lot of detail of the things that we went through, and I the point is to really call out the Board of Supervisors to understand, like, these are in-depth struggles that people are going through every single day, and I'm sure it's not just us. So this past Tuesday, I was able to join Housing as a Human Right Orange County at the Orange County Board of Supervisors meeting to honor my dad and share our devastating experience navigating the broken Orange County healthcare system, homelessness services, and other county systems and programs that ultimately led to my father passing away prematurely. However, Lisa Bartlett, chair of Orange County Board of Supervisors, showed a complete lack of respect for my father's life and my family's grief, and not one board of supervisor, including Andrew Doe, who represents the area my family has resided for over 40 years, shared a condolence for my dad, myself, or any of the other over 200 people whose names were read that morning. The Orange County Board of Supervisors' lack of empathy and concern for what happened to those 200 plus people under their supervision and programming is unacceptable and also telling. I believe that Lisa Bartlett and the other Orange County Board of Supervisors refused to acknowledge the annual deaths of over 200 homeless individuals in Orange County because they lack a sincere concern for this community issue and loss of life. I also believe that they attempt to silence our stories and refuse to acknowledge the deaths because that would beg the question regarding their responsibility for having neglected their role in finding real solutions in the resulting loss of life. This has been going on for over a decade and there is no excuse. The Orange County Board of Supervisors has been under much criticism and investigation for their neglect around homelessness, yet they continue to look the other way. They could have asked me and others who lost friends and family to homelessness and lack of care this year to meet with them to discuss our firsthand experiences and potential solutions to fill the gaps in the county programs. But instead, they and their staff have continued to refuse to acknowledge our experiences, the loss of life, and instead have insulted us by insisting to highlight the programming that exists. From April 2018 to April 2019, I accompanied my dad as he attempted to navigate and seek services from over 12 Orange County agencies, as well as 7 hospitals and clinics. Reflecting on the lack of adequate services we were provided by the county agencies and programs that my dad was in contact with over the last year of his life, I believe the Orange County Board of Supervisors are responsible for the premature death of my father, Paul Frank Brazer. The Board of Supervisors dictate, supervise, and oversee the county programming and contracted services that my father and I, as his advocate, spent over a year desperately navigating, trying to access the appropriate level of care, housing, and medical attention to sustain his life. The lack of coordinated care, appropriate discernment from providers, as well as clear neglect and biases from the county and county-sponsored agencies and hospitals resulted in my father passing away prematurely. My dad would have appreciated having this conversation while he was still here with us, but we were overwhelmed by trying to navigate the county programs. Not many agencies or providers asked him about his experiences navigating all of this, or how he was coping. Instead, we were consistently told there wasn't much support for someone with layered needs, and providers who felt inadequate would try to put the blame back onto us. My dad had a lot of experiences to share and wished to help improve these systems for other people, especially the youth and other vulnerable people he saw that were also struggling to receive care. Sharing this now will not bring him back, but it will honor his fight and will to live and to help others. We hope to increase pressure on the Orange County Board of Supervisors to acknowledge that their lack of action is causing people's lives, and to work with those of us who have been directly impacted to find real solutions so that our family and friends will no longer be in danger of dying on our streets, hospitals, and shelters. I pray that no one has to experience the struggle that my father and those who survived him have had to endure. I thank him for teaching me to have the strength to carry on. May he rest in peace, comfort, and love that he so deserved. Thank you for listening and being here with us.
Thank you.
Okay.
thank you all so much, first of all, and everyone who is also watching and sharing. But I think at this point we wanted to open it up for questions, if anyone has questions or comments.
Sarah, thank you very much for coming out and this private time that you've come out to convey your thoughts on your laws. And I, for one, and I can speak for the people in the room here, that we're not going to let this go. You know, because this is something that we just can't let go. So what can you ask of us that we can do for you as far as speaking? We're going to go back to the Board of Supervisors. It's a place I don't like to go to, but now I will make sure I go because we're not going to let this go. This is just appalling. And the breakdown in the system just totally irks me in this day and age. And what would you like us to do to perpetuate and to remember your father?
Thank you so much. Thank you for asking, Mark.
All I know about the work that this group does has come from Katie. And honestly, I think that you're working very hard already to make these issues heard and to make sure that people who need a voice have it. So I would just say continue the work that you have already started to do, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
I would second that, and I think something I would love to see is, I would love to see this, and I've always wondered throughout all of this, I've been kind of watching the work that y'all have been doing, and wondering why it's not groups like you that are supported by the Board of Supervisors.
No kidding.
Because we need folks who are not afraid to speak up and share real solutions, and to say that, hey, like sometimes we fall short, and we need to acknowledge that if we're going to actually create policies that are really meant to help people. Otherwise, it's just continued lip service, and unfortunately, this is the reality for many families.
You know, I just want to say I was there at the board, and when you came up and started speaking, I was totally devastated, lost my breath, because I've been there many times before and see how they kind of look around and have that mask, you know, like plaster on their face, like they're just there, spending time, watching their clocks, and these are life-changing events that are going on with everybody, and it's real when you come to the podium and it's your father. And I had tears running down my cheeks, and I could not even believe it. I wanted to get up and start screaming so loud at Lisa Bartlett. She just doesn't care. She's watching that little, timer. And I want to say that we're going to keep raising you up. We're going to not forget about this and everybody else. And I'm going to be talking about it in podcasts, and we're not letting it go. So I just want to tell you that, your dad's name didn't go in vain, And I pray for your family, and if there's anything that I can do to help support you personally, let me know, and I'll be there for you as well as everybody else in our group, I'm sure. And we need to put these people on blast at the BOS. So, thank you for your speech.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think one thing I've been reflecting on is why am I not screaming,
Right.
But I think it's because, we spend so much time crying and grieving this as it was happening, and being forced to just have my hands tied, and as an advocate, as a professional advocate on many community issues, and trying to help my dad navigate these things, but just being really in shock.
Yeah, totally.
Constantly in shock, and yet at the same time, it didn't surprise me that the supervisors responded like that. I've seen them respond like that before, when we shared before, and also the agencies that they oversee. I mean, 12 agencies we tried to navigate in 1 year, and not to mention the hospitals and medical providers, and it's just so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming when the places that you're supposed to go and you're referred to get help, and you know there's only so many options,
Right.
and you see your loved one's life slowly, slipping away, and they give you the responses they give you, you feel like helpless, and they beat you down, they don't want you to come back or speak up, and it's hard. It's not naturally in my personality to be resistant and to make other people feel uncomfortable, but we have to. I mean,
Power of the people.
literally we have, the power of our people in numbers, and if we don't say anything and we don't share our stories, as painful as it is, I hate to think of how many other families are going through this too.
Are you comfortable telling us which service providers failed? I mean, that's my word, but would you be comfortable sharing that?
So I can definitely share some off the top of my head. And there's so many stories, and I think that's why I didn't share it, because I'm working on writing it all out and looking back at my notes. A timeline. But it is a bit overwhelming because it was so much. And at the time we were just trying to there were days where we went to 3 hospitals, we would call and then we were referred to another hospital, we would call and they would say they would accept us, we would get there and then they'd take one look at my dad and say, no one ever said that on the phone, you guys need to leave, or, they wouldn't provide appropriate services, the way they would talk to us was horrible.
It is.
And so we would literally be in my car and I wouldn't know where to go. And mind you, I'm supposed to go to work and take care of myself, but my dad, who's given me everything and is one of the best people I know, I'm just watching him, and what am I supposed to do? And I've had MAP programs tell me that, well, we're sorry, we can't take him. You should drop him off on the street. You should drop him back off, let him self-medicate, and come back in a week when we have time for you. And I begged them, please, he's trying to get better, he's sick, and that was the response. So it was time and time of just being shocked, having doctors to ask my dad to administer the medicine himself, because since he's an addict, he should know how to do it, things like that, where I literally became physically sick because I just could not believe the neglect and inhumanity. I will also share that, my father was in Illumination Foundation. I was really disheartened by the services he was received there. We were failed there. But I was afraid to complain because, I was just sharing earlier, I was afraid to complain because I know that they contract much of the homelessness services here in Orange County. And I was afraid if we complain or cause too much of a scene about it or stand up for ourselves, what if we need them again, right? And then what would that look like?
I want to ask you, did you ever get to social workers at any of the hospitals?
Yes. So, interesting thing about social workers, I started asking agencies, I was like, is there my dad needs someone to help him and follow his case, because every agency, we'd have to say the same story again, and start from scratch, and in the meantime, time was not on our side. I was told that there's no social workers from the county that can oversee my dad's case, that just doesn't exist. In the hospitals, so I always thought that was something that existed, right? But each agency would just kind of be done, and then we would send it to the next one, and we'd just have to start over. The hospitals, we had a horrible time at Fountain Valley Regional Hospital. A few weeks before my dad passed, he went into the emergency room and they called me, frustrated because they didn't know where to send him to safely discharge him. And because of the new state law, they wanted an address, and my dad said, well, I don't have an address. And so they called me, and I told him, I'm glad my dad's there. He's very sick. I'm worried about him. He has chronic conditions. These are the things that we need to look out for. Can you do those tests and let me know? Because those are life-threatening issues. I told him I was also working with whole person care to see if we could get him in somewhere, but I was waiting to hear back. And that putting him back on the street wasn't a safe plan, and that in the meantime they should be checking those conditions that he has. They never called me back, and he just ended up back on the street. And he never called me back, and I never really understood what happened because my dad did not have a cell phone at that time. Living on the street, every time he had a cell phone, we'd get him a backpack, and he'd get all his paperwork that each agency was requesting to provide any services. He was walking back and forth from agency to agency trying to take the bus if he could get enough money at that point. Sometimes the shelters wouldn't give the passes.
Exactly.
And then his backpack would get stolen every week, and a cell phone. And so by that point, he couldn't even call me to say what was happening. And I was worried about him on the street with his medical condition. And I wish I could share this more, but it's so much, and it's hard to know,
It is.
there's a lot in this timeline, and I didn't start from the beginning, but there were many other, there were many other agencies, and I'm also talking to some attorneys about how to address the negligence. So I'm also trying to be careful, what I share, I guess, because I don't know what's okay to share. But I will tell you that my dad was, for drug-related, he was criminalized as well. He was actually tried for driving while having had a substance abuse disorder. Something the public defender said they had never heard of before. But he wasn't under the influence, so they insisted on trying him for that. For having someone who drives who is known to have had a substance abuse disorder at some point in their life. And the public defender said there was no way that would move forward, but unfortunately the bias of the jury and the DA attacked him, basically said he was not worth giving it another chance to live. So we were also navigating that, which made things more complicated, and the programs did not step up or address that situation. And so at some point he ended up being in Via Lacey, and his doctor, he had a specialist who was very concerned because he was supposed to start treatment for his chronic disease. So we were trying to have hope that he could get better, and we were seeing that specialist. My dad was really nervous about that when he found out he was sick. And I tried to cheer him up and tell him, it was okay. And for a while he lived with me for a few months until he got arrested for the warrant, because he was trying to get better through all of this, and the shelters put him out, and eventually he didn't end up at his probation, so he ended up getting picked up. And then I told his doctor, and I called Via Lacey and talked to the sheriffs, I talked to the medical staff, but then after that they refused to talk to me again. They refused to give him his medicine, or any medicine, his current medicine or his treatment he needed. In the meantime, my dad kept going and asking him, and I encouraged him to do that. And every time I visited him, he was there for Christmas and his 55th birthday. He was so depressed, and he was so sick. He could barely, sit there and look at me, and it wasn't like him, and I knew he was very, very sick. And I encouraged him to keep going, and he's like, I go, and they just give me Advil, or they literally told him, I believe it was the doctor told him, why don't you just wait? Why don't you just wait a few months till you get out? It's not gonna happen here, you're not gonna get your medication. But other times they would tell him, okay, you'll be seen in a few weeks by a doctor, we'll call you, and then it would never be a doctor, it would be a nurse, and they would just give him Advil. And he was just like, what? I don't understand, I'm supposed to be on medication. And he was feeling the effects. And so his doctor wrote a letter and called in, and they said the same thing. They were just denied and not given much information, and they were very concerned. They were also concerned because before that, Cal Optima had denied his specialist's request for his treatment plan. They said it was not medically necessary. And my dad and I spent over an hour on the phone with them putting in an appeal, and the staff who was writing it all down on the phone and submitted it. Well, we get a notice later saying that it was denied. The appeal was denied. So I call and I say, how is that possible? And then they say, well, you submitted a blank appeal. And I was like, we spent at least an hour, maybe two, explaining everything about his medical condition. And they're like, you know what, we're so sorry, it must have been a mistake. And I was like, okay, well then how do we do it again? And they're like, no, you only get one appeal. And then I told his doctor was just, he understood that the system is like that, but he was very upset. And he said that, well, they're wrong, it is medically necessary, but we'll find a way to try to treat you. It's not going to be the safest way, but I will try my best to continue seeing you. But then when he was in field AC, the doctor was not able to, and the staff was really, really sensitive with us and understood and tried to help, but the sheriff's department and the jail medical staff, neglected him. And 3 months later, after he was released, he died on the street.
Right.